Welcome to the Deeper Into Movies podcast. My name is Stephen T. Hanley. I'm the founder and lead curator of Deeper Into Movies. We are a pop-up cinema based in London and New York. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Paul Banks, lead singer of the legendary New York group Interpol. He has also composed the soundtrack to the new film Sister Midnight. Regular listeners of the podcast will know I'm obsessed with Interpol. They're one of my all-time favorite bands. I am particularly drawn to Paul Banks. I think he's so cool and interesting. And I was right, as this chat will prove. We spoke about a lot of stuff. Hip-hop, fashion, the Interpol indie sleaze era, and what it is like to grow up, maintain a band, but your focus changed. Paul he has kids, he has a family, and how is it balancing that work life and family life? We talk about boxing. This was a really great chat. I'm excited. Here is me and Paul Banks.
Aloha. Can you hear me?
I can.
Jesus Christ, it's on speaker. Can you say something?
Hey, Paul Banks, can you hear me?
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good, man. It's good to talk to you. I just realized the other side of Make Believe was recorded in Willesden Green.
Yeah.
That's literally where I was born and raised.
Oh, no way. Wow. I didn't know you were based in England, actually.
Yeah, very American-centric with our programming and stuff. But yeah, based in Northwest London.
Cool. And you created the site.
Yeah, I'm the guy behind Deeper Into Movies.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was hoping I could say, hey, did you go to the so-and-so in Willesden? But it's a strange part of town, so everything's just been broken down. I can only vouch for the Edwards Bakery on the corner that do really good sandwiches.
I mean, I wound up buying like half a wardrobe at a charity vintage shop there that was just spectacularly well stocked.
No, really?
Yeah, no. I had the feeling that like there was. I mean, I guess they don't. Do they buy stuff off of people, or is it just purely donation?
It's purely donations. I think they get bags from other neighborhoods and stuff. I know there was one charity shop in Cricklewood which had loads of donations from Chelsea, so I used to find loads of really, really good, kind of very preppy Ralph Lauren and Lacoste and stuff like that, which was amazing.
Yeah, I found a bunch of like heroin chic, just sort of very, very cool fashion. I bought a bunch of stuff in there. I bought a bunch of stuff that's in the photographs for that album, actually, in
no
a
way.
charity shop right there. Yeah,
that's so sick. If we go back, what kind of teenager were you? What were you watching and listening to and reading?
I was. Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I was sort of like Live and Die by Nirvana. They came out when I was like 13, was like when they sort of broke. And so by 15, that was like they were my everything. And I think cinema, trying to think about like, cause by the time I was sort of senior and then going to college, then I was kind of into, better things. But prior to that, I was reading like Salinger and Kurt Vonnegut and watching things like Taxi Driver on repeat, but not really that well versed in the in the world of Scorsese or I think kind of like a kid with fairly discerning taste that was into good things when they happened to be in front of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then my mates from high school went to film school, and then my education kind of like went up a notch.
But Nirvana was such a, I was going to say gateway drug, but that sounds really bad. But yeah, it was a great portal into that whole universe. I mean, you probably did the same as me, and then like discovered like Sonic Youth and Jesus Lizard and things like that straight from the.
I was literally just gonna say because I remember because I was living in Spain and MTV Europe was my you know what I watched every day, um, at any free moment, and there was some good shit going on. There was like I feel like Blur was doing some good stuff. Um, Radiohead was happening. I remember kind of being impressed with. I feel like I discovered Catherine Wheel on MTV Europe. Um,
Yeah,
Who
very
did Eat My
already
Dust, You
overlooked
Insensitive?
shoegaze band, I feel.
Eat My Dust, You Insensitive Fuck. Is that Manic Street Preachers? Or is that Catherine Wheel? That's Catherine Wheel.
Guess Catherine will, yeah.
Yeah, but Manic Street Preachers had a pretty big song at the time. So as I say, like I think I had like kind of good taste, but it was basically like whatever MTV was showing me was a lot of what I got into, and then discovered Velvet Underground and Sonic Youth was something I was way into because 100% that video really sort of, was very impressive to me as a teenager.
Oh, so sick. It made me want to skateboard. And then realized
I started skateboarding around that time.
I can say now, I was too pussy at that age then. I'd see the damage. I could see the potential falls. I needed to get into it when I was like 12 or 13 and had no anxiety or sense of fear, I think, to really.
Oh yeah, I was
off.
there when my buddy rolled his ankle and like had to get like 7 pins into his ankle, like broke the shit out of it just trying to ollie up a curb with me after school one day. So yeah, the danger is real. I have so much respect. I never got good at it either because I, like my bones, but I did try.
I was watching a video interview with Gavin Rossdale from Bush, and I remember him saying in the MTV era, looking back, it was absolutely insane that a record label would like pump like $500,000 into a music video and just hope MTV picks it up. There was no guarantees, there was no contracts of we will screen this at this time, there was no deals to be had. It was just try and make a really good expensive video and hope for the best. It seems insane in modern music world.
I mean, by today, yeah, but at that time, I feel like people bought CDs for $16 to $19, I think, or maybe not then.
Yeah, I'd buy the CD.
Maybe then it was like 12.
No,
like,
you're right.
It was expensive, and that was and music was as it is now, like a huge, massive part of people's cultural consumption, and people paid for it back then. So I feel like the fucking industry was kind of flush and like the future was bright. So I feel like their A&R people probably just like did some, had some insight as to whether or not something had a shot before they pumped in $500,000. But yeah, that's funny that they probably did shoot some super expensive videos that then nobody fucking saw.
Yeah. I mean, I remember looking back when my mom would take me to HMV and say, pick a CD. And I'd be kind of doing the thing where I'd pick up a Sonic Youth record. Like I'd pick up Daydream Nation. I'm like, this isn't going to be their best one, but this one's got Bull in the Heather on it. And I really like that single. And I'd just be stood there for like half an hour just weighing them up till my mom just got completely exhausted and just like, pick. You can only have one, pick. And then whenever you went home, you'd have to, reckon with and listen to on repeat. And it was great. It kind of trained my brain, especially for like slow burner albums, with deep cuts and stuff or albums aren't quite what you think they would be from the one single that you've seen on MTV and stuff.
For sure. And actually, you just reminded me that, like, in the era of HMV, I used to go to. I was way into NWA, like Straight Outta Compton, kind of hit me, and then I got into like a little bit of Public Enemy and just all the affiliates of NWA, like Eazy-E's solo work, which is crazy by today's standards, like absolutely out of fucking control thematically, even by gangster rap standards, fucking out of control.
Really?
It's stuff. But
where should I start if I want to get freaked out?
What's the one? It's the one where he does a bank robbery, and anybody who knows will just be like, "Yeah, don't go there."
Oh.
What is it? Nobody move, nobody get hurt.
That's a fucking great album title.
That's the song title.
Oh,
but
okay.
I think the album is Easy Does It. But I
That's
mean, it's
awesome.
great. It's great. But he just says some terrible, terrible things that cannot be condoned, and by today's standards would just be like. I mean, but hip hop has its own sort of like bubble where cultural sentiments. I feel like it doesn't get canceled in the same way that like other art forms might. Anyway,
No, I've clear memories of I've a really cool older brother who completely got me into shoegaze and grunge and great movies, and I have a really cool cousin who was obsessed with rap when it was really when the gangster rap was really blowing up, and like there was that whole deport Snoop Dogg headline and stuff. But I remember him clearly. He had his great super audiophile sound system and said like, do you want to hit some really extreme shit, and put on like Ice Cube Lethal Injection or America's Most, and I'd never heard anything like that, even hearing cuss words that hardcore when you're 13. And it had those whole little interludes and skits with like the helicopter sirens and like the AK-47s going off.
Body Count with Ice-T, there's like really like the anti-police sentiment.
Body Count, they had to go get my mom to co-sign buying because it had the parental advisory.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you okay with your son buying this album? And she was like, I guess. And then
I mean, NWA's Fuck the Police is like mild by Body Count standards.
Yeah, that was incredible. I loved that. I loved OG Hustler. I loved the accompanying video that he had like a feature-length music video for that release.
Wow.
And
I don't know OG Hustler.
The Ice-T album.
Okay. Too Short was big. And so, I mean, to me, I think I was like 12, 13, and it was like, I guess nowadays kids grow up seeing like really fucked up things on the internet. But to me, it was sort of just hearing the sounds of something super extreme and super foreign to my experience was just the most captivating. And I think that's sort of, and I've loved like the bluster and bravado of like hip hop. I think also just sort of spoke to me. But then I was thinking about also like in the world of CDs, like after hip hop and then before kind of Nirvana was Jane's Addiction for me. Ritual de l'Habitual was like a record that I played it until the CD broke because again MTV played me like Caught Stealing.
Crazy, but it has a great video.
And Stop.
Yeah.
Stop was my jam more than being Caught Stealing. And then also like in the HMV thing that you mentioned, like I had an aunt went to like a record store and got 2 records based on recommendation from someone at the counter, and they gave my brother Sugar's record Copper Blue, and they gave me Temple of the Dog. And like,
oh, great.
I respect all those chaps, Cornell and Eddie and everybody. All the single soundtrack, that's an aside, with like Mother Love Bone, that was dope. I was after Screaming
Nirvana.
Trees.
Yeah, Nearly Lost You There, and I was a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan to the point where my Nirvana friends pulled me aside and was like, "If we didn't know better, we think you love Billy Corgan more than Kurt Cobain, and that just ain't cool, bro." And it was
I would have been with your friends on that one.
Oh, bro. Fair.
Anyway,
yeah.
what I the thing that was just funny to me about Copper Blue and Sugar and like my tastes was that I listened to like I'm Going Hungry, like that's cool stuff, and then I just would hear what my brother was listening to the Sugar record, and then one day I was like 12 or 13, I like went down, I was like, you want to trade? you want to have this fucking Temple of the Dog record and give me that Sugar record that you're listening to, because that's way more my speed, I think. And then that Sugar record became, and it was a perfect switch. Like he definitely should have had the Temple of the Dog, and I definitely should have had the Sugar record. But Copper Blue by Sugar had a song, If I Can't Change Your Mind, Then No One Will, which is, as you said, like when singles weren't representative of the record, because like I don't give a fuck about that song, but that was the big song from that record, and that was like my skip. I couldn't skip fast enough over that one. But the rest of that Copper Blue record by Sugar was like so influential for me before I discovered the Pixies and stuff. It was just, which is funny because his DNA, Bob Mould, his DNA is in the Pixies.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the band Sugar or the record Copper Blue I'm mentioning?
Yeah, hugely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a massive one for me. I just always thought it was funny that like as a 12-year-old, I was sort of like, Temple of the Dog. Like, I don't know about this. Nowadays, and it's funny, like I also kind of like wasn't so into Pearl Jam as a younger person because Nirvana was just like my everything. You couldn't really beat it. But as I got older, like Pearl Jam fucking rocks, man. Like big fan. It's like interesting. Like my taste had to kind of grow into that band. But two thumbs up for Pearl Jam.
I could never. I mean, as people, and I think Eddie Vedder's a really cool guy, and I really respect what they've done. And I try and dip in musically every once in a while, and I just can't get it. I don't know.
No, I really vouch for their singles, man. All the big ones really speak to me. I find them very emotionally resonant.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, the Jeremy video was huge on MTV rotation.
Yeah,
that was really haunting.
I didn't realize that was the director of that made Arlington Road. He's a big director.
Yeah, I think he got a lot of heat for that
Ellington
music video, and I think he kind of ditched the music video world to go into movies afterwards.
That was a good video, a striking video.
It was intense. And were your copies of Salinger the same as the UK ones where there was no blurb on the back? I always thought that was so fucking cool. There was a weird run of British copies that had no blurbs on the back of a book, so you'd have no idea.
Because they didn't want people.
It was a whole series, like Esme of Love and Squalor and Fanny and Zoe. Nothing. There was nothing on the back.
Okay, Fanny and Zoe is great. That was something I read as well in the sort of teenage years. That was great.
And the one that really blew my mind was the first story, and I think it's 9 stories, where The Perfect Day for Banana Fish, where the guy just kills himself he's on the beach. He gets off the beach, he goes into the lift, and he's got sand on his feet, and someone looks at his feet in the lift, and he says, "Are you looking at my feet? Because I've got perfectly normal sized feet, I assure you." And then he goes back to his hotel room and kills himself. And as a teenager, I was like, this can be a short story? Just this? That's fucking amazing. And then that was my jumping off
point.
That
reminds me, there's a Julio Cortázar short story about a guy taking off a sweater and falling out a window. It's just like...
Yeah, when you first find those type of things, like, this is just a story. That's the end line. He shot himself after someone talking about his feet. That really blew my mind. That really kind of haunted me, and it was a great...
Another one was the Bachman books. Did you ever get into that?
The Stephen King?
Yeah. The Long Walk to Forever. That shit is fucked.
Yeah, I find Stephen King... I find that all the real heads I know will really respect Stephen King as a real gateway into cool literature.
Yeah, I read a lot of his body of work before I started reading quote unquote, adult literature.
Yeah.
But the Bachman books for a teenager, that was a big deal.
Yeah, was it Rage? What's the one with high school?
That was Rage, yeah. And then there's Lawnmower Man is in it, which there's The Running Man, which isn't like the movie, but it's dope. And there's The Long Walk to Forever was the big one for me, where there's this, it's basically like what Hunger Games is based off, I think, where it's just like young people walk until they die. And if they slow down, they get shot. And it's just like this fucking crazy like group of like 13-year-olds walking until everyone's dead. It's some kind of like government sanctioned sort of, I don't know if it's population call or if it's pure entertainment, but it's fucked,
I was going back over your catalog, and I realized I was 20. Goddamn, I was 22 when Turn on the Bright Lights came out, and I saw you guys in. I was going to the Edinburgh Festival, and I saw you guys and Franz Ferdinand. It was incredible. It was the first time I'd seen. I don't think anyone had heard of Franz Ferdinand yet, and they opened for you, and that was just spectacular. But I was going back through your records, and I was wondering, how do you think your lyrics have changed or your writing process has changed through growing up and becoming a dad and things like that? Does it change, or are you still kind of mining the same themes?
Huh. Um,
That's a big question
Sorry,
to throw at you.
something had just like distracted me a little bit when you said about Edinburgh and Franz Ferdinand. It was just that was where you first saw us, and
That
then
was where I first saw you. Yeah, it just
yeah,
and
Franz
then I was.
Ferdinand was such a great live band.
They was so sick.
To the
They people didn't know
yeah,
what I think it took a couple of tracks for people to really kind of get their head around their style, and then by the end, by the time they hit them with take me out and stuff, people were just like floored as to who they were watching.
yeah. Did you ever hear a band called Clinic that was around back then?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Distortions was always
In
my favorite track of theirs.
Yeah, Internal Wranglers. Internal Wrangler, I think, was the record title. But yeah, they were so
Yeah,
good.
and they play in like surgeons masks, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I was watching I got back into Suede's first two records, and I was on a YouTube rabbit hole, and I remember Brett Anderson saying something really interesting, that he was just saying obviously his lyrics early on were very, those guys similar to you, I kind of think have a similar kind of flair for the dramatic, and he was saying that early on his lyrics were a lot more kind of personal or biographical to yours, but it's like, my life just isn't like that anymore. I'm not about breakups and obsessing over people and falling in and out of love. I'm a dad. I'm kind of middle-aged, and most of my lyrics now are focusing on different anxieties of just, family life and worrying about my child and things like that. And I was just thinking, for you as someone who's similar age, and I was wondering.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fascinating question. And I think like a couple different thoughts. I think on the one hand, it's the same insofar as like I think I find a lot of inspiration just sort of like existential dread and alienation and confusion. And I think the world we live in today gives so much fuel for, that kind of perspective. There's just so much tragedy and horror, and truth is, fucking on the wind. It's really
Mm-hmm.
like everything, like confused. Things are far more confusing than perhaps they've ever even been now, because of the way that the use and misuse of information. And there was one thing that's like quite prescient, I thought, in this, like I would like to pretend that I'm not getting it from a Tom Cruise movie, but it was the first place that like sort of revealed it to me. But in the last Mission Impossible, there's like this concept where they're sort of saying like all these nations are getting hard copies of all their documentation, because literally everything digital is now going to be sort of questionable. And I just think as a human race now, like, you can't trust any video, audio, text, anything that's online or on the cloud will never be really, 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 really conclusively authentic ever again. And so like this idea that there's just like warehouses full of people like fucking typing shit up that they know hasn't been altered by some hacker, so that there's hard copies of things that can't be adulterated, is fucking insane. I mean, it's really Orwellian shit, and it's real. So I think that's like, in terms of just sort of like angst and dread and alienation and confusion, like there's still plenty for me to pull from, and that's always been a kind of source of inspiration. But I wanted to say that like as a another way to look at that kind of thing about like writing in the same fashion is, I think like, first, when you were asking the question, I sort of thought about like when I first started writing, I kind of wanted to like throw rocks through windows.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now it's kind of like, I'm also interested in like window dressings, and like I like wallpaper, and I like curtains, and I like fucking stained glass, and I like rocks.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have to sort of like go to the same party and tell the same joke to the same people again and again and hope that they get like the same reaction they did the first time I told the joke. So I feel like it's kind of like it's perfectly natural for a lyricist and a writer to just sort of evolve and not be who they once were. So I don't think about it too much. Like I've also like in my later years as a writer, I just kind of like write in a almost automatic writing kind of way where I'm really just sort of I've always written from a melodic point of view first and foremost, and lyrics second after I find like the melody that I'm looking for or that works with the song that Daniel has presented or whoever I'm working with is presenting or myself. Um, and then once I have the idea of the melody, I would sort of carve in the words. And then where I've kind of evolved as I've done this longer and longer is like when I write the first melody, which is usually just sort of like my Sweeney calls it Romulan, fake words that just fill in, the general idea of what you're trying to sing.
Mm-hmm.
When you're first improvising, you're using like fake words or like cigaros. And then I would go in and sort of fill in the blanks and like fill in the words. And as I've gotten more and more experience with this process, I kind of find that the fake words that I write the first time are oftentimes real words that just have like a veil over them that I have to peel off. And I find that quite fascinating that like literally it's not like first thought, best thought, but like sometimes there's just like a message that's trying to come out of myself and I don't know where it's coming from. And I've sort of got a kick out of like this idea of like, if the first thing I say is sort of nonsense, it's actually not nonsense if I just find what the spirit was trying to say. So I sometimes try and just like get as close as I can to my first gibberish reactions to music when I'm writing top line.
Two things on that. One, going back to the AI of it all. I remember I was always been a big Val Kilmer fan. I think he's incredible, and I'm friends with his kids, and I remember seeing this photo of Kurt Russell at Val Kilmer's grave, and he's holding a flower, and I thought, this doesn't really seem like Kurt Russell's vibe to pay respect to his friend, but then say, hey, let's get a photo for it and post it on socials, but it looks so real. And then everyone was commenting saying this is so beautiful, and I went on a wormhole. It's completely fucking fake. This photo never happened, and it just blew it's really this is nothing new, but it was just so disturbing and so crass that something like this could just be manifested. But now it's the point where there's this whole world of fake movie posters that keep on going around of movies that don't actually exist but look totally plausible like they do, to the point where this idiot is going on IMDb and Letterboxd and waiting for them to be released. It's just absolutely absolutely terrifying. It's
it's a crazy age. And now like I don't know if like it's funny how sometimes the most frightening or the most relevant advancements, sometimes you first discover them in strange ways. Like the first time I've seen compelling video of like a video of someone that's not real is like Wayne Gretzky talking shit to an audience in Buffalo about how like, anyway, just like it's him at a press conference giving a talk and you're like, wow, Wayne Gretzky's fucking off the chain right now. Like he's saying some crazy shit. And then you realize like, oh, that's just fully AI. Like that's completely fake comedic video where someone's just putting, just a press conference to get like making it look like Wayne Gretzky said crazy shit at a press conference. And you would not have any idea that that was not reality if it weren't for the fact that what he's saying is so fucking outlandish.
Yeah.
And I think like, holy shit, like that's just like a funny meme on Instagram. Like LOL, like wouldn't it be funny if Wayne Gretzky like shat on Buffalo? And it's like, bro, but that literally could be a world leader right now. And that's fucking nuts because I can't tell that that's not real with my eyes.
Yeah, there's literally a Amazon action movie. There's like a world summit and they kidnap, the terrorists come in, hijack the building, and then take all the world leaders and just face map them and make them say one sentence so they can then AI them, get enough of recordings so then they can say, hey, fuck Iraq, we're bombing them tonight kind of thing, and just call complete world chaos. And I was like, this is ridiculous, but also kind of possible. It's just a crazy world.
Yeah, we are in a crazy time.
Also, I had a embarrassing flashback when you're talking about your lyrics that I remember, I think you guys were the last band of my 20s that I completely went stan, super fan, reading the message boards, buying every item of merch I could. And I remember bumping into you after Camden Barfly as you were leaving, and I was like, shit, now's my chance. Got to talk to Paul. And the first words out of my mouth, I said, can you confirm on Leif Erikson, do you say pony or phony? And I was like, that's my question. But as you were leaving, I was like, all right, cool. I'll see you Wednesday because I'm coming to the ICA show. So I'll see you. And then I was like, wait, you sound like Mark David Chapman. And I was like, I meant as in I'll be in the audience and you'll be on the stage. And I'm like, this is getting fucking worse by the second. And I was like, thank you, goodbye.
That's hilarious. I almost feel like I can remember that, even though that would have been my heydays of being obliterated. But that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah,
I
will say you were very kind. I think you could see that this guy is, just word vomiting all over you. But when did you meet RZA?
That was because I was promoting my first solo record, and I said, I think to the enemy that I had stolen a RZA beat for my song "Only If You Run," which was not an actual intentional robbing. It was something that after the fact I was like, oh shit, that might be like Swordsman, which is one of my favorite Wu-Tang songs. Anyway, I get an email out of the blue from this guy Tyler Childs, and he says, hey, I represent RZA. Do you want to meet him sometime? And then I was like, yeah, I fucking do, bro. And then via this manager guy, I linked up with RZA in New York and met him with some other musicians he was hanging out with at a bar. And then I met up with him in a hotel and we played chess while he got his hair done.
Wow. Did you win?
No, I've never beaten RZA.
Okay. That's kind of how you want it to be.
I beat RZA once in a game of speed chess.
Right.
And he beat me like 20 times.
Yeah.
No, those dudes are they're good players. I love chess. I play a lot of chess, but RZA's kind of on another level. Anyway, we just kind of got along. You know, he's such a likable guy. He's a really extroverted, just happy person. And I think we just got along. And so those encounters led to a gentle suggestion from the same guy, Tyler Childs, you know, why don't you guys jam? And then I went out to LA and went to his home studio and we jammed a bit, and then the rest is history.
I don't know how I missed it, but my friends told me, because they know I'm a Wu super fan, to watch of Mics and Men. Have you watched the Wu documentary?
No.
It was really, you may already know from RZA the whole inside story, but it was just so fascinating seeing those guys come together. But it got so complicated and tragic when all of them just basically got bought by different record labels. And so then it just made things infinitely more complicated for when everyone's got too big. The whole thing just exploded and everyone had their solo careers. And it was really fascinating watching them trying to get back together with just everyone having their own solo, you know, like lining up the release of solo records, not to clash with other Wu members also having solo records. And
well, and I think there was some resentment, like that RZA wasn't getting around to producing some guys' solo record fast enough, especially after
everyone was like, "Who's
Raekwon's
next?"
had such big success, and it's like, "Who's next?" Yeah, like Liquid Swords and Raekwon did so well,
and then Method obviously got the big Def Jam. Yeah, it was.
But I think RZA also was like one of the things that he pioneered was the fact that he pioneered this idea that like Wu-Tang is signing to this label, but every member of Wu-Tang is entitled to go sign with whoever the fuck they want, like that, and it's even if it bit him in the ass. That was like some leverage shit that I don't think had ever happened before. So, I mean, he's a genius. Like, RZA's completely like, I think by any way you want to talk about what that word means, like, that's this guy, where it's kind of anything he puts his mind to, he does at an exceptional level because he just sees through things. It's really fascinating spending time with RZA.
Yeah, I mean, it was so amazing. Again, still in my era of buying CDs slowly and digesting them. When I'd first I went to one of my friends and I was like, what's the first solo Wu-Tang I should get? And he said, go for Cuban Links, so I did Cuban Links, and then I did, well, I think it might have been Iron Man afterwards, and then I got to Method Man and the Jizz. I was like, how the fuck is he every beat bangs? I don't know how the fuck he's managing to give every album its own identity and sound and tone. And obviously Liquid
Totally. I
Substance
mean, and
blew my mind.
oh yeah, so it's such a great record. And I think though, like when they kind of, had difficulty, that, as you say, is described in this documentary that I haven't seen, but it kind of makes me think like even of Interpol, where it's like we were such volatile personalities and there was so much tension and just fucked upness between the four original members of Interpol that one thing to think about is like, oh, it's a shame that, the four didn't stay together, what could have been. But another way to look at it is like, it's fucking amazing we made 4 records together.
Yes.
So, and I think similarly with like Wu-Tang, it's like, it's unbelievable what you managed to do with that group of artists who weren't friends and were even, I think, in some cases like rivals before he got them all to like just listen to him and sort of follow his plan. It's just nuts. I think sometimes it's better to celebrate what did happen rather than what didn't happen, lamenting what didn't happen.
Yeah, and also looking back for a supergroup with that many members to be, we always say you're going to be the Michelle of Destiny's Child. There's no Michelle in Wu-Tang. Everyone is so fucking sick. It's just insane.
I love Master Killer's. Master Killer has sick fucking solo records. I don't know if you follow him, but
he was always one of my, his verse on Mystery of Chess Boxing was one of my all-time favorites. And I was like, always desperate for his records to come out because I always thought I just loved all the cold-blooded assassin vibes he had going on, and I always thought that was super cool. But I always kind of thought he was a slept-on member because it was a long while before his solo records came out, so I was so excited.
No Said Date, I swear by that record. School banging on the lunchroom table. It's such a good song.
And you had Kool Keith on your record. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, he's the greatest. He's one of my. I've often cited him as my favorite artist, bar none.
Yeah, I remember. I was just having this whole nostalgia thing of when I got a good hi-fi finally, and then I was like, I'm fucking buying back all the favorite albums of my 20s that I foolishly just sold off when Apple Music started, and I was like, no, I need the physicals back. And I remember just playing Dr. Octagon and Sex Doll in my house, and my girlfriend's been like, what is this? And I was like, no, babe, he's a gynecologist from space. What don't you understand?
Yeah. Like, he's Black Elvis. What is the problem?
Yeah. No, this one's when he's in his alternate personality, Malcolm. And she was like, I don't get it. And they even like the Sex Style booklet is just so kind of sinister and cheap. And I was like, great, right? £30 on Discogs. Perfect. And she was like, wow, this is so strange.
I loved hanging out with him when we worked together.
How is he?
He would say just like, he's amazing. I mean, he's amazing. He would just say like one thing. He said like, you know what I'm saying? Like if Beyonce started going to NASCAR, like everybody would be fucking with NASCAR drivers. Like he was just making a point that like it's arbitrary that everybody wants to like fuck basketball players, and that if somebody like Beyonce suddenly started watching NASCAR, everybody would want to bone like NASCAR drivers. And I was just like, that's okay. But one of the things he said while sort of saying something like that was like, he's like, it's like you were saying, but and it's like, I hadn't said nothing of the sort to whatever thing he was trying to say to like support his point. And I just loved it. It was like he's doing like a Jedi mind trick, like you will let us into the club. Like it's like you were saying. And then he just says some like completely random shit. And it's just like, oh, that's the greatest. And you're right. I was saying that Beyonce could go to NASCAR. But yeah, just such a talented, pure artist. I just find his stuff to be so inspirational.
When did you take up boxing? What do you get out of? That sounds like it's a douche question, but yeah, what do you get out of boxing? What drew you to it?
I always wanted to do like, as a kid growing up with Karate Kid, I think I always wanted to do martial arts from like a very young age, but never got into it until college. I started doing a little bit. And then my girlfriend at the time was training with a boxing trainer, and I sort of went to meet him to get a referral to go work with some other guy to learn like Krav Maga and like fucking Muay Thai. And in the end, I just sort of got along with my girlfriend's trainer, who's just a pure boxing coach, and then that sort of just that was that. That was my kind of introduction to having that sort of like sensei student relationship, which I think is at that point sort of like, I guess, 30-year-old. It's like a good time to go back to that role of being a student. And it's really been something that I've thrived in since then, and all the relationships. Yeah, I'm like obsessed. I train 3 times a week now. I've put so much fucking money into training boxing. I should be way better than I am, but it's been like, I don't know, 12 to 15 years. I can't even remember how long I've been doing it pretty obsessively. I think it's just one of those things. It's like a great like equalizer too. I often comment like sometimes the people that I can now count as my friends are people that I would never. I don't know how I ever would have met them were it not for being in a boxing gym. And it's just like you really cross paths with like all walks of life in those environments, and everyone is the same. Like it's a wonderful thing. Like the greatest fighter in the gym is the nicest guy there, and no one's judgmental of beginners. It's a wonderful community. I mean, it's a violent sport, but it's a wonderful community if you're in a good gym.
Do you spar? Do you do matches? Totally naive question, but I'm just wondering how you.
No, I spar. Yeah, I spar, but no, I haven't had a fight, but I've had some hard spars.
Who's your favorite boxer?
Like the of the last 20, I would say Golovkin. But he's pretty much retired now. Of active, I think Virgil Ortiz Jr., T. Bud Crawford. There's a lot. There's a really lot of. I like Shakur Stevenson. I don't think he really gets that much love, but I think he's beautiful technique. Gervonta Davis, Artur Beterbiev, Bivol is pretty hot.
My nephews were asking me about Jake Paul Tyson, and I was just trying to tell him what a goat Tyson was, and I found the only way I could convince him was I found this YouTube footage. Do you remember that time when Mike Tyson walked out to Coil in the ring?
No.
And he just had, everyone usually has the hype music, and he just had this Coil industrial drone playing as he walked into the ring. It was just incredible. All the commentators were like, what is this sound?
Is Coil a band?
Yeah, like kind of almost like Throbbing Gristle or just pure industrial, or Wolf Eyes, just pure industrial noise.
That's awesome. I mean, and I love, he wouldn't wear socks. He wouldn't wear any special outfits. Like, yeah, he was just like gladiator, man.
He'd come in without the robe, ready to go.
Yeah. He's the baddest man. He's the baddest man ever to do it. But that, that fight was interesting because from my point of view, like, I feel like a lot of people, I mean, to quote, I think it's Floyd Mayweather Sr., you don't know shit about boxing is a big thing that I think was very apparent after that fight, because a lot of people were like, that was a fake fight and Mike Tyson like threw the fight. And it's like, I don't think so. I think Tyson threw that fight. I think, Jake Paul won that fight. Mike's pretty old, man. It's a hard fucking sport. People were using like these photographs of like saying like, look, Tyson could have done a leaping left hook like he did when he was 25 and fucking killed Jake Paul right here. And it's sort of like, I don't know if you don't realize that like Jake Paul's moving back. There's like, it's a game of centimeters, and like Mike Tyson can read the fact that like me fucking lunging at this guy right now who's moving back away from me and his guard is kind of up. Chance I'm going to miss that shot, lose my balance. And like when you're so exhausted, like making a giant leaping hook might be the last energy you have. So you kind of like really choose your fucking things wisely in those moments. Anyway, a couple instances where people seem to think that it was like proof that Mike Tyson was like pulling his punches. It's like, no, I just think he wasn't close enough, or he didn't think he was going to land that shot, but he didn't bother. Basically, I don't think that fight was fake. I think Jake won that fight.
Yeah, and Mike has nothing to prove. I feel.
No,
I think.
I mean he's fucking old as shit, and like, yeah.
Did you?
But all you
ever
got to do with a guy who's like that old is like just not be right in front of him, and I think that's what
Yeah.
Jake did.
Did you ever see the Tyson documentary that James Toback made?
No, but I remember seeing. Didn't James Toback also make a movie Black and White?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember seeing that movie. Just like this movie's fucking crazy, dude. When he's almost like he almost kills Robert Downey Jr. in a scene where it's like that's the most authentic scene I've ever seen.
Open-handed slap, and he measured it.
Did he slap him? Did he slap him?
It was an open-handed slap, and he.
Oh wow.
He said on the commentary that he knew Mike wasn't. Mike gave him a tap to let him know to back the fuck off. He was just out of jail for a few days, very sensitive about his personal space, and just didn't need any of his drama. But absolutely incredible scene.
Yeah.
There's also it's a very odd movie, but there's a scene in one of his other movies with Damon Dash, which is really incredible, where he was always great at putting rappers in movies in really interesting situations. But yeah, the Tyson movie is almost like a tone poem. There's lots of Mike's narration and mulling over his past and his. There's an amazing monologue. It's worth it just for there's a monologue where he talks about how mentally prepared he is going into the ring, and he says that he has a moment where he just says, "I'm going to fucking destroy this person. I'm going to take out this person. I know which round I'm going to knock him out in." And he says, the second I stare at them and the second they look away or flinch or anything, I know in that moment that it's already over, that they're scared of me. And then it just cuts to a super cool knockout montage. But that sequence is really thrilling. It's so
well,
cool.
and I think a lot of people don't realize that he's also like a real student of the sport. Like he was exceptionally well trained and like he really knows his shit. Like he studied film that like people don't even have access to because Customato had like archives. Like he fucking really knew his shit and had the best training and was like an unbelievable athlete. But it is kind of fascinating in his later life that we see him as this sort of like spiritual, fascinating guy. Who I do think he had like an extremely traumatic childhood. It makes 100%. You so sad to think about what he had to go through.
Yeah,
and then
so
I
much
think
abuse.
To live sort of so misunderstood and just he's an incredible figure. I think he's a real, just national treasure. But he's really one of a kind guy.
Yeah, it makes me so upset when he's memed or kind of broken down to his lisp or things like that. I'm just like, man, this guy is so much more complicated and fascinating and tragic and brilliant and
tragic. Yeah, and tragic.
100%. There was so much abuse in his childhood and stuff. And most of his want to train and his want to learn to defend himself was literally just him being so exhausted in every sense of being fucked with.
Yeah.
It was just completely.
I mean, if you just see how close he is to sort of tears so much in his later life, I feel like there's just something even that is very, very touching, very sad.
How has the transition been from New York to Berlin?
I mean,
are you between the two, or are you pretty much Berlin?
Somewhat, but I have a son now, and I've got a daughter on the way. So Berlin is really the home base for a few years. We've got more family in Germany than I do in the States, so it just makes sense. My wife is German, and I like it. I've always liked Berlin. I'm not great with the language, but it is a lovely city. And I was kind of splitting my time between New York and Panama anyway. So New York wasn't somewhere I'd spent all that much time. If I was home from tour, I was kind of trying to be on the beach. So the only downside to being in Berlin is that I'm further from my beach, but I'll get there eventually.
Is that important to you? You need the sun?
I just have a place on a very magical beach with and I surf, and very 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 special place for me. So it's kind of like became the yin into my, like, the city life and touring was one thing, and then this was my kind of my getaway was on this remote beach for many years. So yeah, it's pretty important.
And how is the balance now? How do you recalibrate that balance now? Your family man, different priorities. We're not in our 20s anymore. Of still putting out great work, but also I'm guessing your priorities are very different and your interests and
Well,
passions.
one of my when I had my son, it was kind of like a really interesting like focusing where it became like, oh, okay, I don't really give a shit anymore about um certain types of validation as an artist. I suddenly didn't give any shits about, because it was like, oh wait, the most important thing is now very clear, and that's this little being's happiness and well-being, and everything is secondary to that. But on the flip side, my kind of work became even more important in another sense of just like wanting to be a good example, wanting to be um, just a success for my family. And I think to do things in a way that I would want to be a good example to my children, like as far as being committed and professional. And then also to provide for my family. So I feel like I still have plenty of inspiration, as we talked about earlier, from the world and just from my life in general. I have lots of things to write about. I love making music. And as far as kind of like being in a band and showing up and doing the job, as I say, it's like I'm not so needing of validation, but I want to be the best, Interpol member I can be, and I want the band to be the best it's ever been, and in my solo work, same. So it's kind of focusing, but also sort of like I take things a little less seriously, and then on the exact flip side, I take things more seriously. So it's kind of, but everything's more clear to me now that I have a child.
Yeah, wow, that's something amazing. Validation isn't as important as now you have a kid. That's, yeah.
Yeah, if the kid is smiling and laughing, then who the fuck cares? If I've done this, that, or the other, if somebody says this, that, or the other about my work.
Yeah, it's crazy. We adopted a dog, and I see my dog as my child. And it was so crazy to all these cliches you hear about from my friends with kids, like, no, it changes you, dude. I'm telling you, your list of priorities or your own personal, instant satisfaction or whatever is just, it completely goes away. And it's like you have something so much more important to look after. And dogs basically stay like toddlers all their life. So you're kind of forever in protected dad mode. But
yeah,
it was incredible.
Yeah. And I think it is like once you have a responsibility over another living entity, that just really shifts your priorities.
Hugely mind blowing. And yeah, and people are always like, do you want to come to the party? And I'm like, I really kind of just want to get back to my dog, who is called Blu-ray, and just hang out with my dog and watch a movie and stuff. It just, it completely changes.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, buddy. Same. It's I wouldn't change it for anything. And I've always thought you were a fashion goat, and I was wondering, who do you take influence from, or who do you cite in Steve as a sharp dressed person? Not to be that guy babbling on about you guys wearing suits and whatever. I'm just wondering from your personal style.
I totally. I mean, I just get it from the street usually, and I'm always keeping an eye out for just people who I like how they're dressed. A lot of times, especially like kind of youth, a lot of hipster fashion these days is like, it's kind of like what the not cool kid in 1994 was wearing. And so it's sort of like when I was trying to be a cool kid in 94 and like looking at someone else and be like, I don't want to wear those kinds of jeans or that kind of sweater or those kinds of sneakers. And then the coolest kids today are like wearing those kinds of jeans, and it's just so funny. It's like, it's not that wasn't cool in 94. That was like lame in 94.
It blows my
And it's so
mind.
funny that
I'm
like,
telling, yeah,
but who the fuck cares?
yeah,
Um, but it is just like, so some of those things I can't do it because I wouldn't do it then. And in fact, I like a lot of my fashion identity was shaped in opposition to that look. So I won't do it now. But then there's sort of other things in kind of like modern day hipster fashion. I'm like, oh, that's fucking like it grows on you almost. And now I feel like I could top some of the modern looks. But for the most part, I just, love clothes and I will just always kind of notice someone who I think is well dressed. I think in the kind of like Hollywood sphere, someone who I can tell, some people it's like you can kind of feel like it's either all stylist or
yeah.
but then there's other people where you feel like no, whether or not they're working with a stylist, I can see that they have flair, and I would probably pick Barry Keoghan.
Really interesting.
Yeah, he's got good style.
Oh wow, It's so funny when you were talking about people who you thought were cringe in your 20s or in school. It's kind of like when I really love things like the Gucci sweatshirts and things like that. And these were things at the time that we'd call like chavs would wear, or kind of certain Lacoste shirts and stuff. And I look back and like, that's a fucking vibe. Basically, a lot of the kind of designer / athleisure range and stuff, or like the Tommy Hilfiger sweatshirts and stuff, or polo sports that I thought were really cringe. And now I'm just like, man, I'm in a fucking eBay bidding war trying to buy this XL polo
Yeah,
sports shirt that I would have scoffed at ages ago. And then I get into
totally.
that crazy, almost Mark Fisher brain of like retro culture of like, how the fuck has this come back around? How is this now? I'm dressing like someone I would have laughed at in school when I'm wearing my.
It's so funny, but it also makes you think how short time is, because it's like, man, it doesn't. I don't feel that
That's the
old.
craziest
This
thing.
is,
Yeah, I remember there was that theory of saying basically that every era is marked by a defining musical genre, and we just don't have one now. And I think the same. I don't think we have signature styles of a time. It's all just kind of falling in on itself.
But one thing I would say that it kind of occurred to me when I was like in college, kind of thinking about how like basically it's like I had this analogy at the time of like being in a building with glass floors and you can see back through time through the floors. But more importantly is that like time is like this great filter, and like we just don't think or talk about all the shit stuff from 1970, and we don't think or talk about all the shit stuff from the 50s, 60s, 80s. You just think and talk about the dope shit from those moments in time. Whereas in the present, you're exposed to all the shit as well as the little amount of dope shit that exists. So I think fast forward 20
Yeah,
years and you look back on now and you'll only be paying attention to the dope shit and be like, oh, that was the signature dope shit of that moment in time. But one thing that does confuse me is the return of new metal. And like I was in like my hipster cafe on fucking the most just cool kid hipster cafe in my neighborhood, and like they were fucking blaring like some dude, I don't know if it was like Limp Bizkit maybe, and
yeah,
it was just like, and I know other kind of like really cool artists that are young that like unironically are like way into that kind of stuff, and it's like again like holy shit, man, like
yeah. No,
when new metal was happening the first time, it was
bad enough.
lame.
Yeah,
It was not like it was not cool. But here we are. It's just so funny.
there was my friends run a metal venue in London, and it's a really cool space, but a true total metal venue. And they said we need just some films once a month on a Sunday if you want to do something. And I said, well, this is an interesting brief that we don't normally work in, but let me put on like a classic Slayer concert. And it did okay. And then I was like, well, I fuck with Pantera. Let's do that crazy Pantera tour video. And that did okay. And then, but nothing was really killing it. And I was like, fine, let's try a fucking Korn concert. And it went in 4 screenings needed. 4 fucking Korn screenings needed. Then we did a Deftones, who I co-signed, and that was cool. But And I was like, should we just try a Slipknot? And I'm mainly doing, I want to keep my friend's venue prospering, so I wasn't too precious about it, even though I don't fuck with it. And then Slipknot went fucking crazy, and I was like,
Well, I fuck with Slipknot for sure.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the time I was into metal, I was into black metal, I was into death metal, but I'd never found new metal heavy, in quotations. I just don't, the guitar sound I think is just totally strange. And I know One of Tricks Point Never completely loves new metal. Bobby Kirk, Hacks and Cloak totally fucks with new metal. And I'm just like, I'm just not getting what you guys are hearing.
I'm
which
with
is
you, man.
fine.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't know what the kids are doing. Okay. I'm
All
going to
right.
let you go. This has been such a great talk. I've been such a fan of you for so long. It was great to chat for an hour.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, enjoy your page. And if you have any follow-ups or, want to chat again, just hit me up.
Will do. Hopefully I'll see you in Wilson Green. We can go charity shopping.
All
Cool, buddy.
right, brother.
Take care. Thank you again.
Thanks. All right,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Boom. That was me and Paul Banks. I urge you to check out Interpol and to watch the movie Sister Midnight, and the soundtrack is out now. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Joshua Eustace, aka Telephone Tel Aviv, for my beautiful music, and we'll speak soon.